I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
Peace, family. I'm so happy, and thank you guys for sticking with us. We had some little technical difficulties in the background, but we are good to go. Let me just give you guys a couple minutes to get in the house. I tell you, these two brothers, I like when these two people are together talking because you just never know what you're going to get. But let me tell you what you are going to get is the truth about whatever we're talking about. They are going to bring you the truth because they don't hold nothing back. They say what it is. And so I really appreciate that. Just a little, housekeeping stuff, our regular information we like to give out. Let me just first say shout out to all of you guys that got in here early. Michael Guest was up in here. He couldn't wait. At 7 o'clock, he was waiting. So that's what's up. Peace to Michael. And I see a lot of people who have traveled with us to Egypt and that are coming on this trip in February. So peace to Hazina. Can't wait to meet you in person. I see Ayoko. My man, Wolfman Lou, he just told me tonight that he's coming to Egypt with us. So that's exciting because I've been talking to this brother, I want to say like 2 years, but I've never met him. And so I feel like he's my good friend, but I just haven't seen him in person. So this is going to be great. Zenobia, peace from Stone Mountain. That's what's up. Rasha Mella. So hi to all you happy people. Okay, fam. First thing I need for you to do is like and share this video. Send it to everybody that you know, because this is a topic that it's all about Black folks. And this is, we're always, having the in-depth conversation about how we can really, be liberated in this here land. So this is an important, very important topic that we need to discuss with the family. And so make sure that you are sending it to at least 3 other people. Make sure that you guys are liking and sharing the video. And while we're waiting, right there, you can go to hapifilm.com and get connected. You go to hapifilm.com, you can click the button that says get connected, and then you'll be put on our email list. So anytime, because, social media is funny and, they can shut you down at any, given time. So we like to, be able to have more contact with all of you that's part of the HAPI movement. So make sure that we actually have your email address so you get the information first. Okay. And also while you're there, we have merchandise. We're clearing out all of our merchandise to bring in new stuff. So, the prices are really, really good. I have on my HAPI t-shirt. I'll show you guys this later. So make sure you go to hapifilm.com. Then you can get connected with the newsletter, and you can also get some merchandise. You can also find out information about our tour to Egypt that we are going on in February 16th to the 25th. And, it's really exciting. We have some little new news we're going to, talk about later on with our trip to Kemet. So make sure, you can get all this information by visiting hapifilm.com. I'm going to actually, before we, I want to go ahead and get started. Because this is a topic we got to give some time to and really, really think about this. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in, my man, Professor James Small and Charles Barron. By the way, both of these gentlemen are in the HAPI film, which you can check out by visiting hapifilm.com. All right. The professor's already on the phone. How you on the phone when you're supposed to be on here with us?
I know. I'm off.
There it is. Yay. All right. Greetings to both of you. I haven't seen you both together in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, greetings, Sister Felicia and Brother Barron. It's always an honor.
Well,
Yes.
greetings. I'm humbly honored to be before you, my brother. You know, you're one of my mentors and one of my leaders.
That's what's up. All right, so let's just get started, okay? But before, anybody that knows me, I always like to just know, before we get started, I like to have a definition of terms so that everybody knows what things mean, okay? So let's just first get started with what is a migrant? Like when we're talking about migrants, what are we talking about? And either one of you guys.
Let me do it this way. Before we talk about migrants or immigrants, both terms are usually used, and it's usually people coming from other countries and coming here. But I think we need to put this whole immigrant conflict into our macro context. This is a crisis of imperialism and capitalism. So they have us dealing with it on a very local level, and I will mention what should be done locally and how people can be housed and how they cannot overlook those of us who are already in shelters, and that face of immigration is not just Mexicans, it's Africans, it's Haitians, it's Caribbean, people from the Caribbean. But let's put it in the context of imperialism. If they want to stop this crisis, then cut out their imperialist policies. Why do people from Mexico come here? Why do people from Haiti come here? Why do people from Nicaragua come here? Because the country has historically supported dictators and had coup d'etats from those who were elected by people in these countries. So if you put dictators in place that American corporations can get involved with what they call trade, anytime it's free, you're going to pay for it. So we're looking at it from that context. So when you think of, let's just take Mexicans, and they're coming from Texas. Well, Texas was a part of Mexico in the first place. So who's the real immigrant? Most of the people came here and stole the land from the indigenous people. And then when they went scattered to other places and tried to come back, now they're immigrants, the migrants. You're the migrant. You're the one who came from Europe and stole land and then stole Africans to build it. So it's their imperialistic foreign policies that put in dictators like Somoza in Nicaragua. They caused coup d'etats in countries across the world, and Venezuela. Of course, they've always been trying to do Cuba in. So when you look at all of that, if they change their foreign policy, pay reparations to Haitians so that they won't have to leave Haiti, France and America owes Haiti. So the first attack has to be on America's foreign policy. And as long as we allow this imperialistic foreign policy, building a whole lot of military bases, AFRICOM in Africa, and once you do that, the paradox of Africa, that it is the richest continent on the planet with the poorest people because of imperialism. That's number one. Number two, once you get to the point where, since you have this policy, and now the chickens are coming home to roost, they're coming at your shores now, and so America says, what do we do with these people? What do we do with these people? And then when you look at the Africans who are already here, that's us. They're already in shelters in my district. They're already in shelters in the Bronx. So how do we then say, oh, welcome these folks, because these are brothers and sisters. We don't want to speak against them. But how do we welcome them? And we do in our districts when people have been here for 10, 20 years are locked in shelters and not even having the same opportunities that they're granting these so-called immigrants who are now, they're trying to give them $800 a month, give them some license to do some vending and all of that. We can't even get that. So now, as the white imperialists do, they have those who are at the bottom fighting each other because of the imperialist policies. Let's take New York City. New York City and New York State is huge. So what does Eric Adams do? The so-called black mayor, he's really blue, Mayor Adams cop. What he does is he puts extra shelters in East New York, in Harlem, in places in the Bronx, in our communities. And Bensonhurst, which is predominantly Asian and white, has no shelters. Bay Ridge, which is basically Asian and white, has no shelters. And so they're saying we have a crisis. Well, put them in these white communities too. And then here comes Hochul. She wants to do something at Floyd Bennett Field in New York City, and the whites don't want them there. Well, we are oversaturated, and there's a law that doesn't allow for the oversaturation of shelters in a given community. Now look upstate, there's plenty land upstate. The New York State budget is $229 billion. You want to solve this? Then build some shelters, some homes for them, and all that land upstate, because we're oversaturated in black and brown communities in the city. That's why they're saying it's a crisis. Another thing, you want a shelter place for the new immigrants? Then take us out of the shelters, put us in permanent housing, and those shelters will be available for immigrants. This thing can be settled tonight if they were serious. It can be settled tonight. And I told this to Eric Adams. I said, why don't you put them more in the white community, put our people, and we ain't saying don't come to our place, we don't like you and all of that. We ain't have no bad words for you, but for the grace of God, it could be any one of us. But we are oversaturated. So now, Eric, put them in some of the white communities, put them upstate, Hochul. You got a lot of land upstate, and then have the money that they're given to these businesses to take care of immigrants. They're making billions and billions of dollars off this. How about using that for rent subsidies for permanent housing? And say in New York City, anybody that is any developer that wants to build new housing, 30% of it has to be for those who don't have homes, or the so-called homeless. We did it in East New York. I made sure that any project I signed off on, they had to have a percentage for the homeless or the unhoused. And we got over 300 people out of homeless shelters into permanent housing. We shouldn't allow them to warehouse our people in shelters. So you put them in the shelters. They should have a program for permanent housing. They should have a program for workforce development, finding them jobs like they want to do these immigrants. And they should have a mental health program for those who are being mentally challenged, and just warehousing them and throw them in the streets. Tonight, out of this $107 billion city budget and $129 billion state budget, we could solve this problem. And the federal imperialistic policies must stop. That's why I think the ultimate solution is revolution.
Well, damn. Okay. You know what? I think you probably answered almost all the questions I had. Okay. So if this is a conversation you had with the mayor, okay, and the mayor's just like, I'm not going to do it. What can we like specifically do?
I think people need to rise up just like they do in other communities. It can't happen from the top down. It has to happen from the bottom up. I think if people begin to say, I don't care how many black faces they have in high places, that is not no damn progress. Because the blacks that they put in high places in New York State, the mayor's black, the chancellor of schools is black, the commissioner of the police is Latino now, was black, the public advocate is black, the attorney general is black, the head of the state assembly is black, the head of the state senate is black, we have black borough presidents, we have black district attorneys, and we have more black poverty than we had in a long time. Black faces in high places, they are neo-colonial puppets of a colonial capitalist system that maximizes profit and greed over the need of our people. And when you put a black face on it, Kamala Harris, a black vice president, ain't heard nothing from her in a long time. But you have a black president, Barack Obama, that doesn't even mean anything. Because as long as you have a colonial capitalist system, who becomes the administrator of that, whether it's a neo-colonial black puppet like Barack Obama, or a neo-racist, fascist, ignorant madman like Donald Trump, or neo-conservative, neoliberal Joe Biden, they all are administrators of a colonial capitalist system that creates poverty, that creates imperialist wars abroad, and that creates an immigrant crisis that can be solved overnight.
Wow. But Professor Small, you have anything to add to this? Because I want to kind of go back. I know. I mean,
what in the hell could I add to that analysis? Charles, that, sir, is one of the best overall analysis of imperialism, colonialism, capitalism in partnership with itself against the poor of the world. You just broke it down so simply, so basically, that I can't add anything except to say ditto, you know? And we see right now what's unfolding in West Africa is with the taking of Niger, of Mali, of Burkina Faso, and now Gabon. It's the same thing. You've got the neo-colonial Negro puppets who have been keeping our people in check for imperialism for decades on decades, being overthrown by young military regimes. And people say, well, it's the military, but let's address who is in the military. The young people are in the military, you know? And we can be sure that the enemy got some of their people in the ranks, but there's something happening that takes us back to the young president they murdered in Burkina Faso some years back. The brother Sankara, who loved his people, had the right approach to solving the problem, and laid it out just like you did, made it so basic. It's we can do it. They've got the capital, we've got the budget, but starting with the countries the people are coming from, most people don't know the history of Nicaragua, the history of Guatemala, the history of Mexico, in terms of the American corporate structure and what they did to those countries. And they have the nerve right now to be in South Africa holding a meeting on the democratization of Africa, led by the Biden team. We're going to bring democracy to Africa. You know, you killed Patrice Lumumba. You've been responsible for the overthrow of almost every government in Africa in the last 20 years. And you're going to bring us democracy. And so we're sitting right here in the US watching the failure of the so-called democracy. Because these brothers and sisters, I've spent many years back and forth to Haiti. People do not want to leave home to come here.
That's
They've been put in a situation they don't have any choice in providing food, clothing, shelter, safety for themselves and their family. And then you make them appear to be a criminal when they migrate to your country, you're the country that created the condition that forced them to migrate.
There you go. Right on. Right
My
on.
brother, Barron, your analysis was spot on, clear. We've got a black government in the state of New York at every level of importance. And it doesn't mean a damn thing in terms of the condition change for our people.
That's right. You know, Dr. Asajifo Kwame Nkrumah said it best in his book, Neo-colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. This is why we know that they're dying. You know, when Martin Luther King said in 1968, you know, perhaps I'm trying to integrate my people into a burning house, which he told Harry Belafonte. That burning house was colonial capitalism. King was a socialist. Eric Adams, Hakeem Jeffries said they are proud capitalists and said they are anti-socialist. They got to stop the socialist movement. This came out of their mouth. But yet they celebrate Dr. King's birthday, hundreds of people making speeches when they're celebrating a socialist. Dr. King was a socialist. And the reason being is because he was anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist wars in Vietnam and abroad. So Dr. Smalls said it well of what's happening in Africa. We got to understand colonialism. We live in black communities in America are domestic colonies of a colonial capitalist system. And here's where they get you. They get you focusing on racism. And we have to, but racism is the ideology of capitalism. It is not the system. The system is capitalism, and then you have a socialist system, and communism is the utopian system that doesn't exist. You have communist parties and countries, but you don't have a communist government. So when we look at every black community, what is a domestic colony? A colony is when a foreign nation takes over a sovereign state and brings in its military and extracts from its natural resources from that land and the labor, slave labor. That's what colonialism is. So domestic colonialism means that we, in black communities across this country, we don't have anything like Tulsa or Rosewood in the 21st century. There's no black community where we're in control of the land, the resources, the means of production, all of the social, cultural institutions like they had in Rosewood in the 1920s. So now we have none of that. We are over $1 trillion consumer market, and yet we have no community in the country that looks anything like Rosewood or Tulsa of the 1920s. And here we are in 2023. So
let me put a slick definition on it, Charles, Brother Barron. You know, somebody asked Malcolm X, said, Brother Minister Malcolm X, what do you mean by black nationalism? And to just capsulize what you said, he said, you must control the land, labor, and resources, the economic, politics, and culture where you live. We control none of that where we live. And that just capsulizes it. And when we think of it, here we're expected to spend $2 trillion this year in consumer dollars. We control no land, we control no labor, we control no resources. We do not control the economics, the politics, or the culture where we live. All right. And then we by definition, we can't even call where we live communities, because communities presuppose that you control those things.
Absolutely.
That's right.
We are neighborhoods in capitalist and colonial communities.
Go ahead now. That's what I'm talking about.
And so if we clear on these little definitions, it'll help us to see what the problem is.
That's right.
And we won't get blinded by black colonialists or neo-colonialists. Because that blinded us in New York State. They're blinded. Because you look at, oh my God, every office that we thought that could be held, that would be the cause for change for better, is now being held by people that look just like us, and things are getting worse for us.
Getting worse.
That's right. And check this out. You hear Dr. Smalls? Dr. Smalls is breaking it down the way it should be. You know how they really get us? On racism. Now, you know, I am dead set against racism and fighting against it all my life. But this is what they want you to do. They want you to focus on racism, because then you're focusing on fighting for inclusion into a fatally flawed colonial capitalist system that will never, ever benefit you. So you fight against racism and you say, hey, we only had white presidents. We need a black president. Here, give him Barack Obama, but let's keep the system the same. We have a black female vice president. Here, some CEOs. cops, black firefighters, and all. Let's give them racist started fighting
Oh,
racists. How bad? Nancy Pelosi at a kente cloth around with Uncle Hakeem Jeffries. So, you know, when you have these fights against racism, and you should every time it rears its ugly head, but you will not hear any elected official ever speak out against capitalism, ever speak out against colonialism, because the colonial mode of production is what keeps the capitalist system fueled. So they know that we have to get them out of the plantation, off the plantation, because they're rising up. So what we'll do is create the prison industrial complex. So we'll transfer them from the plantation to the penitentiary. And we can still get the same kind of labor in the penitentiary. The 13th Amendment says slavery shall be abolished except as a punishment for crime. So we went from the plantation to the penitentiary. And then they keep making sure that you can have the political offices in our neighborhoods, but you can't have the land. You can't own the means of production. You can't. This is why I don't think we should go to black capitalism. We should be socialist. We should go for community land trust. We have one in East New York, and we're saying to the city, just as you gave these rich white developers the land in our community for $1, we want you to give that to the community land trust so that the community can own the land and the community can determine what's built on the land. And instead of having us being a business person and me hiring you and have you work for me so I become rich and provide you with some jobs, no. How about worker cooperatives where the workers control the business, the workers collectively own the business, and not just the individual. That's what capitalism does. Look out for number one, to each his own, survival of the fittest. Socialism says the community comes first, collectivism, and not people over profit, not profit over people, but people over profit. And that's why we need to get into socialism. A lot of those people that are against socialism can't even spell a word, haven't even read a book on it, but they were told what it might mean in some, snippets that they see on TV. But Dr. Spalls, you spot on, man.
Well, there's another good definition. I got this definition thing from Malcolm. He just like to define things. And that is to look at capitalism as being the foundational tool for the same Anglo-German oligarchs that ran slavery. Okay, so even those who are running the capitalist machinery, they're keeping in place the same oligarch, the same families, right, okay, that ran slavery, that financed. A lot of people don't understand this. Yes, America wasn't sitting at the table at the Berlin Conference, but they financed everybody who sat at the table at the Berlin Conference. You understand? And so Wall Street was invested into the invasion of Africa in 1885 and 1890, which should have been called the First World War, by the way, because every European army in Europe invaded Africa from north, east, south, and west, financed by Wall Street, the same capitalist that runs America, that has created a crisis today that they're calling, they don't even call the brothers and sisters immigrants, they're sanctuary seekers. They didn't tell you they're seeking sanctuary from anybody. People want to eat. They want food, clothing, and shelter and safety for themselves and their family. And you saying, here's your only option. I'm going to take away all of your options in your homeland and force you into America to be cheap labor and slave labor for us to stand on corners and wait for construction companies to come and pick you up and pay you what they want and drop you off, and you can't say anything at the end of the day. And then we're going to go further. You know, I had to speak up in Watertown, New York back in June. I did something for Juneteenth. They knocked my telephone out from me for 2 months. Just got the use back like a few weeks ago, right? I said, what the hell? But I realized I had forgotten how rural and agricultural the state of New York is. Right?
That's right. That's right.
And where are they getting the workers to run this massive agricultural and rural state? We forget how agricultural and rural Long Island is.
That's right.
And
That's
where
right.
are the workers coming from to fill the slots in these spots? And I know how that gets personal because I have family members from South Carolina who 40 years ago was brought up here as really slaves and promised of jobs as domestics and found themselves in prison on farms in Long Island and was able to escape when they got a message through to my father, who took my uncles and went out there and got them. So we know that kind of stuff existed then and still exists now. But these brothers and sisters that's coming from all over Central and South America, and we see them going to Long Island, people think, no, Long Island is really nice. Yeah, there's a bunch of farms out there that need workers.
Yeah.
We have no insurance coverage, have no adequate home, have you name all of the things they don't have. So they become free agricultural workers for New York State. And they're not saying this. Every now and then you hear a dribble of it coming out, you know. And they know what they're doing.
Yes,
this
they
is
do.
Slave labor.
That's
This
what it is.
slave labor.
And you know what's interesting to this budget? Mayor Adams has only done 2 New York City budgets, and his financial director 2. I've done 14. I know what's in these budgets. First of all, they said this year, 2023, there would be a deficit. We would have a financial problem. They have you thinking that we're in a financial crisis. Well, let me tell you something. In 2020, Wall Street made a profit of $21 billion. Wow. When COVID hit for 2021 and 2022, Wall Street made a profit of $51 and $56 billion. Then after the crises went down a little bit, they went back to their normal $22 billion profit. Let's come into 2023. They said it's a crisis. We don't have no money. I sat at the table, looked at the budget, and they said from 2023 and 2024, there was an unexpected $4 billion that came into the city budget. $4 billion, unexpected. They then have what they call a reserve budget for a rainy day. It's raining every damn day for us. A reserve budget of $8 billion. So they have an $8 billion reserve budget. They have $4 billion that they didn't expect, but said, oh, we got to pay $2-3 billion for the immigrants, and we got to pay $16 billion for the workers, for the unions to settle those things. Look what they're doing to the retirees. The retirees, I'm supporting them. I don't care what Lion Henry of DC 37 says. The retirees, Mayor Adams wanted to privatize their health care into Aetna and the Medicare Advantage. We call it Disadvantage. 20% of the retirees' money for health care is paid by the city for the last 57 years. The mayor wants to now say, give it to Aetna. Now they have to pay a premium and co-payments, and they won't have all of their doctors and institutions accepting it. I fought against it, and we won in court, and I have a bill forward now. They're having a fit because Mayor Adams wanted Aetna to privatize it so he can save $600 million out of the city budget that we've been paying for the retirees for the last 57 years. So Aetna can make a multi-billion-dollar profit on healthcare. Aetna insured enslaved Africans for the European enslaver, admitted it, and said they will not pay reparations. Aetna does not allow unionization, but yet DC 37, UFT, their leaders are pushing this plan on them. We said no, and we won in court, and now I have a bill out there. This is deep, because now the 600 million that he was talking about saving, that's less than 1% of the $107 billion budget. And who are these retirees? They're your school crossing guards, they're your lunchroom attendants, they're your emergency workers, they're your teachers, they're your sanitation workers. They are municipal workers that when they were working, they said, we can't give you higher wages, but we'll take care of your health care for life. Now here comes Mayor Cop, Republican Adams, and decides he wants to privatize their health care and tells the active workers that if we don't do that like I want, then y'all gonna have to pay more. Liar, that's not true. The city been paying it for 60 years almost, and they're not paying a penny more. The other piece to the
No.
No, 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 no,
No, no.
That's from the devil. I told you they messed my phone up for my brother Charles. People, listen to me. I know this young man here since he was a teenager. This young man is one of the most well-studied, well-learned political mind in the Black world. You hear what I'm saying? And everything that brother Councilman Barron just laid out to you
there we go.
The truth and the absolute truth.
Oh, okay. He's going to come back. And you know, what's interesting about that is that, Eric Adams just had a press conference, I think yesterday, where he said that, if they can't come up with the $12 billion that they're going to need by the year 2025 for the migrants coming to the city, is that the taxpayers are going to have to pay the $12 billion deficit. And so I'm sitting here, I'm just like, okay, I'm just doing the math. I'm like, oh, no.
So you can see when you hear a truth teller.
Yeah.
When you hear a true servant of the people, Councilman Barron isn't just the servant of the Black people and the Latino people. He's the servant of the people of New York. And he's telling you the truth. Because then his community is predominantly African and Latino, but there's many white Americans also living and profiting in that community from his work. And that's why they keep reelecting him, because they know that they have a champion for honesty and truth for the people of New York. And what he just told us, those who are the city council presidents, the mayor, all these people they're lying. And some of them are lying through their silence and not opposing the mayor and the lies that he's spreading. And I know this mayor when he was a patrolman. He was he destroyed the Black police organization, the Guardian, to create his own thing, Blacks in law enforcement, instead of building the foundational organization, the Guardian, which was in place when he got on the force. He didn't just start behaving in the manner he's behaving.
Yeah. So, while we're waiting for him to come back, because I know, migration, you've talked a lot about migration, like this global migration. How does this current migrant crisis compare to the historical migration, such as the Great Migration of African Americans in the early 20th century? Are there any type of lessons that we can learn from these experiences?
Well, the lesson that we can learn is that we must learn to struggle to be more informed about the conditions and the people who control the means of production around us. When our people were migrating out of the South because of white terrorism, physical terrorism, murder, genocide, raping, and because employment, we were still in pretty much a slave culture in the 1920s and 30s, where we had no sanctuary and we had to work for whatever wage people gave us. And we were put in a situation where we put into debt slavery to such a degree that at the end of the year, when you paid off the debt, you only broke even. and you had to continue to work for these plantations in the South. I grew up on a plantation in the South, and so saw a lot of this. And so we migrated for the same reason people are migrating now, for economic survival, to be able to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety. But the condition that forced the migration, as it was forced on us then, those are the same conditions of imperialist and colonial and capitalist greed that's forcing the migration of the people out of Central South America, Africa, Haiti. Because the people who are crossing the southern borders aren't just Latino people. Africans are coming from the continent, are coming across the southern borders. Brothers and sisters from Haiti is coming across the southern borders. Brothers and sisters from other Caribbean islands and from Brazil is coming across the southern borders. From Nicaragua, from Guatemala, from Honduras. All of this mix of poor people whose governments have been overthrown or controlled, whose legitimate leaders have been murdered, mostly by the United States of America. Okay. So what we're seeing is the result of imperialism. And people think imperialism is an ugly word that communists use. No, imperialism is a description of foreigners coming in your country and determining what commodity you're going to plant, and determining what your salary is going to be, and determining who your leader is going to be. And if you pick leaders of your own, they're either imprisoned or assassinated by the foreigners who are trying to put in place means of production that give them maximum profit and leave you in dire poverty. And so to try and live and have any kind of life, you have to leave the homeland that your ancestors left for you. And that's what we're seeing.
So, Professor, listen, I mean, you know, and I'm trying to say this in a way that it doesn't sound like I don't care about these people coming to America, okay? Because that's far from the truth. You know, anyone that's in a place that's you know, that some of these things that we're hearing that's happened to them, and they're coming to a different place for a better life. You know, I understand that.
It's not just a better life. These people are victims of genocide.
But
They're
what
victims
about
of economic genocide, cultural genocide, political genocide, and they're victims just running for their lives.
So what about the Black folks that are here that
Then
are
we need to join forces with them. We need to fight the forces that created the conditions. Fighting them is not going to solve any problem.
No, I don't. No. I'm not saying I'm not saying fighting.
I'm saying just the way you look at it. You've got to look at it right. See, if you don't look at it right, you think the victim is your enemy.
No, I don't think the victim is my enemy.
I'm not saying you do.
Oh, okay.
Many of our people do. We hear it in the language all the time. They call them the they, or those people. No, they're the victims just like you are. So let's start finding ways to join forces as the victims of these capitalists, imperialists, colonialists, these thieves, these marauders. Let's join forces against that minority and change our condition. Because the people who are creating the conditions, they are minority. But they have the political power, even when the people in politics look like us.
So like Bacon's Rebellion, that was a time when all the poor people, you know, across all different races.
No, let's not mix up eggs with apples.
Okay. Well, no,
I'm not impressed by the 1619 project, so we get that out of the way really quick.
Okay. I'm just saying like the banding together of everyone.
Well, Baker wasn't the first time we band together.
Okay.
And 1619 wasn't the first time we arrived on these shores. We had already had the rebellion in South Carolina against the Spanish. Okay. And those Black folks teamed up with the Native American folks and drove the Spanish back into the Caribbean. This is before 1619. So if we're going to use historical markers, let's use appropriate ones so that we don't use historical markers that people have put in place. Because when someone else set the premise of your argument, you can never win your argument, no matter how beautifully it sounds. Okay? And so people who are oppressed need to find ways to work together, no matter who they are. Okay. We need to find ways to work together. Otherwise, the oppressed will constantly be doing what we're doing now, shooting each other down in the streets, selling drugs to one another, rape and molesting the female young element of our own communities. All those things are happening because we have turned in on ourselves rather than turned on the people who are creating the condition that's causing the poverty that's causing us to do and behave in the manner that we're behaving. And this comes from basically fundamental ignorance of history. You know, I always say history will resolve the mystery. And if you have just the basic knowledge of history, you know who the DuPont family is, and the Vanderbilt family is, and the Carnegie family is, and the Rockefeller family is, and the Morgan family is. How long have they been in power without ever getting criticized? Yet they control all of those people who at the end of the day is making your life miserable and untenable. So we've got to begin to really get serious about understanding who is behind the poverty that exists in the communities in Guatemala, in Mexico, in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York, in Miami. Who are the corporate structures and the banking structures that are thriving while people are living in poverty in those places?
So, okay, so Professor, I got a question for you because, you know, I'm thinking. Listen, I'm just gonna say, look, okay, let me just tell everybody in the chat. I'm about to take one for the team, okay? Because Professor's about to yell at me. He's gonna say something slick about
I'll
me.
be very
Yes,
sweet.
you are. Because this is the thing. Like, I hear what you're saying. Okay, I mean, intellectually, I understand what you are saying. So, in this position where we're here and we're fighting for all, you know, like Black folks, we always fighting to get this, fighting to get that, you know, this elusive equity that we're fighting for here, you know, in America. How do we then join forces with someone who, when we're sitting in schools with them and we're conversing with them, they at times act way more racist than the people who we think are racist and look down upon us a lot? How do we now say, okay, listen, I know, you know, like people who don't feel like they're a victim, because I don't know if all the migrants coming in feel like they're victims, you know, and they come here and sort of kind of look down upon us. And we're like, wait, what? You know, so I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do we?
You need to listen. Yes, I am going to beat you up. Yeah, first you need to listen. Okay? You need to listen to yourself first. Listen to yourself. Just that little dialogue you just had. Listen to yourself. Okay? Listen to what you say. Then ask yourself, what's your alternative? Ask yourself that. What, given everything you said, not you, the personal person, you know, at least here, you, the any Black people who feel exactly that way, because that's exactly how it looks. Ask yourself the question, what is your alternative? Right? What is your alternative? We've been here with this demon. What fight have we waged against it? But now that some other people have been brought here who makes that fight greater, we're going to turn on the people that fighting the demons. And if we were fighting like we should have been, those people wouldn't have even had to come here. It's because we are trying to become partners with the demons. We want to be like you. We are fighting to become a part of your control, your murder, your genocide. That's what many of us have fought for, to become a part of the American dream. There have not been an American dream for African people.
Yeah.
It's been an American genocide, cultural genocide, economic genocide, physical genocide, spiritual genocide. Yet we are fighting so we could be a part of that. Let me help you carry out your genocide. I can do a better job impoverishing Black people than you can. Let me show you how it works. No. Those brothers and sisters from Central, South America, Africa, and the Caribbean are victims in the same way we are victims, and even more victimized than we are. And if we, who have been the victim of the genocide of America, have been so enamored in wanting to be a part of the machine of genocide ourselves, such that we can't even see the victimization of our brothers and sisters, then we need to ask ourselves some fundamental questions. And that question is, who is the enemy? And where does the enemy live? Does he live in our minds? Have they been that successful? Does it live in our dreams? Does it live in the action we will take? No, we are fighting a capitalist, imperialist machine that was put in place over 500 years ago in the West. It has perfected itself because it has been smart enough to use us, the majority population, to keep them, the minority population, in power. And because we dream and aspire to be them, and yet the way it's set up, you can never do that, we'll always be the foundation of the very capitalism that's killing us. And we have to figure how to break that syndrome. And this history, the knowledge, true knowledge of history, that will allow us to do that. Because that dialogue in America around the critical race theory, I don't even use the term, because they proceed from the wrong place. Okay? The 1619 Project, that was magnanimous, but hell, I knew about 1619 60 years ago, 78 years ago. I'm 78 now. I know about it all of my life. We didn't start fighting back in 1619. We didn't come to the Americas in 1619. We've been coming to the Americans since the 1400s as enslaved people. And we had been fighting every minute on the island of Jamaica, on the island of San Domingo, on the islands that became Trinidad. We were fighting on the Barbados. We were fighting in Central and South America. We were fighting in Brazil before there was a United States of America. So don't start my history when the white Anglo-Saxon want to create a premise from which he want to discuss how I can resolve my problem with him based on a false notion of racism, which is his creation. The whole concept of racism is artificial. And I think Brother Barron was breaking that down very nicely. So I have to set the premise from which I fight. And that starts with knowing the history of myself and the conditions that I've been struggling against in the last 500 years or more.
I don't know if y'all can hear me. Am I back?
Yes, sir. You're back.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
We were discussing two things when you was like so brilliantly talking. One of the things, I was telling them is that Mayor Adams yesterday had a press conference where he said that if we don't get this $12 billion, that the taxpayers will have to pay $12 billion by the year 2025 if the federal government doesn't give them any money to take care of the migrants that are here in the city, that this would be a taxpayer problem. But when you were sitting there doing the math, I was like, 12 billion, like they, you were talking about how they have the money. But they're playing like, what's that game where you have the three cones?
Three-card Monte. They play three-card Monte. So the feds will say it's the state will say it's the city will say it's the feds. It's the feds, the state, and the city. America has over a $6 to $8 trillion national budget. 6 to 8 trillion. They have a $31 to $32 trillion national debt. Where did you spend all that money? A debt means you had that money, you got it from somewhere, because this is a debtor nation. So they have that. They print money when they want to. I've seen them do it. And how does Barack Obama, George Bush bail out Wall Street to the tune of $800 million, and then it turned into billions. They bailed out Wall Street, but won't bail out Fulton Street or 125th Street. They don't have money for us and homeless shelters, but they have billions for Wall Street to bail them out, saying they too big to fail. Because if Wall Street fails, then the economy fails. That lets you know the connection between capitalism and Wall Street. So we cannot allow Eric to put everything on the feds, and he has to do that as a mayor to try to get something from the feds. And then Biden will say, we ain't giving you nothing. And then Eric will say, see, it's all Biden's fault. And then Hochul will say, no, put him on Floyd Bennett Field. Eric said, no, put them upstate where you are, because they're racist, they're capitalists. It's about greed and profit and not the need of the people. There's no way you can tell me that the richest country in the world should have some of the poorest people in the world, Native Americans, indigenous people on reservations, black
concentration camps
and brown. That's right, concentration camps. How do you have 40% poverty in the South Bronx, 40% in the richest city in the world? How do you have 30% poverty in most of our black communities in the richest city in the world? And you talking to me about federal government, but you got money for Wall Street. You have money for Aetna. You want Aetna to make billions off of healthcare, racist Aetna. So, you know, I've seen the budgets, so I know they're lying. I know there's a lot of money in this state. 229, do you know $229 billion is the state budget, $107 billion in the city budget. That's over $300 billion in one state. No African country has that kind of money. Most European countries don't have that kind of money. New York City, $107 billion is larger than 45 to 46 state budgets. New York City's budget. You have no idea the kind of money they have, and then they'll tell you, yeah, but we have expenses. Yeah, I'm not stupid. I've seen the expense and the revenue for 14 years, and you lied every year. You said we're going to have a crisis. You know we have a surplus this year? It's a surplus, but last year they said they couldn't spend money out of the reserve account to help black people, help poor people, because we need to save it for next year's deficit. It did not happen. It's a surplus this year.
So Mr. Barron, so what, okay, when you're saying that, you know, we have to rise up from the bottom up, and Professor Small is, saying that we need to join forces with, with the migrants coming over to take over the system, right? How do we do that? Like, what are steps that we can specifically do to make that happen?
What we can do right away, and as I tell you all the time, I'm about power. That's why we named our organization Operation Power. There's only two things that you have, or people have over you. It's power or influence. Power is the ability to act. Power is to make decisions in your best interest. Power is to control the destiny of your community, economic destiny, political destiny. That's power. Influence is when you got to demonstrate, scream, and holler to persuade people who have power over you to make decisions in your best interest. So where's the power? In the city council. There are 51 city council members in New York. The city council passes the budget, not the mayor. The city council determines what's going to be built on city-owned land. That's why my beloved East New York is not gentrified. East New York is not gentrified. Bed-Stuy is. Those same Negro politicians that complain about the white gentrifiers, they're the ones who let them in. Laurie Cumbo, Tish Ames, they let them in. Hakeem Jeffries, they let them in the 57th Assembly District and then complain about the community being gentrified. Well, you did it. It's like Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. used to be called Chocolate City. Now it's Marshmallow City because it's less than 70, 80% it used to be. Now it's 40%, 30, 40% black. Atlanta, Atlanta used to be 60, 70% black. Now it's 40 some odd percent black. How did it change? It wasn't no white politicians in Atlanta. It wasn't no white politicians in Washington, D.C. It wasn't no white politicians in Bedford-Stuyvesant. How did Bedford-Stuyvesant get so white with all these black politicians? So I say we start on that level. This is what my wife and I did. We started going against building an electoral movement for power with black radicals. We got for 21 years, we took over the politics of East New York. That's why we're not gentrified. That's why we stopped Wall Street from coming in. That's why we got $388 million schools. And now, the machine got those 2 seats back. They got my seat back. They got Inez's seat back. But we're not fighting. We're not stopping the fight because we got Karan Allen and others coming behind us. And we're going to continue to fight the machine. We need to do that in every city where we are the majority or anywhere near it, every community, like what Chokwe Lumumba did in Jackson, Mississippi. He ran revolutionary, may he rest in peace. He ran and he won the city council seat, then he won the mayoral seat. We need to build an independent black radical electoral movement across this nation and do what NESA did and Operation Power did in East New York. We beat the machine. Matter of fact, I have a book out called Speaking Truth to Power, and people can get it on Barnes and Nobles and you get that book, and there's a blueprint in there how to beat the machine and how after you beat the machine, when you get in there, don't flip on us, maintain your same revolutionary ideology. And we show that you can be a revolutionary, you can be radical, you can say, I ain't wearing no shirt and tie, you can say, and what we did? We got political prisoners freed. We got a reparations bill passed in the state. Ain't the one I wanted, but at least it's passed. And we got a whole lot of other stuff. I think we need to build independent black radical movements across the city, across the state, and across the country.
So
that's one option, and we're not voting our way to freedom. I don't think that is electoral. It's a strategy, a tactic, not a panacea.
So, Mr. Barron, you mentioned your book, and our friend over in the UK, shout out to Jesse, because it's like what 3 o'clock or something like that in the morning, and he's on, and he was trying to get the book, but he's in the UK, and Barnes and Noble won't ship it to him. So yeah, I know, but we have another person that's I think I saw in the chat, Zenobi is going to the UK, so she's gonna bring the book over. so I'm just like letting you know. Yeah, I'm letting you know that we got to figure out a way, because we got to make sure that our UK brothers and sisters make that happen.
See, everybody has to do what they think they should be doing. I'm focusing on the electoral arena. We are members of the Shrine of the Black Madonna. You knew Reverend Brother Smalls. You remember Reverend Clay?
Oh, absolutely.
Clay?
Yeah, I knew him and loved him.
Exactly. So we joined his church, the Shrine of the Black Madonna. We are there now. We're in the area now. We're part of that church. We have a thing called Beulah Land. Beulah Land, we have 3,000 acres of land, 3,000 acres of land. So here's how we fight against the system. One, you separate, build your nation, and then you fight the electoral arena outside of building the nation. So in the shrine, we have the land, we have our own Black liberation theology. Our Africanness is based on a Black revolutionary Messiah and Jesus Christ, a Black revolutionary Christ. And we take that, and then we have the Black slate, which is dealing with the politics. So that's how we got to do it. Do for self, build our own nation, and then let's transform the host nation, because you're in the belly of the beast. So if you think you're going to own something in the belly of the beast and they're going to leave you alone, you got another thought coming. So you got to have a dual struggle, a struggle to build our own and own our own and feed ourselves and clothe ourselves and protect ourselves with security, and then radically transform the capitalist system to more of an egalitarian socialist type of system, and then Key to all of this is the liberation and unification of Africa under socialism. That's what we have to do in our struggle. So wherever you come down in that, as a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, be a revolutionary teacher, doctor, and lawyer, connected to a movement for liberation of our people. Most of our people are into survival. They want to know, you gonna give me a job? You gonna help this landlord get off my back? That's why I got into electoral arena, because now in East New York, when they come up and say that to me, you're gonna get me a job. I got 6,000 jobs for you. You gonna join the movement now? You're gonna stop this law, these people from taking our homes? I did. I stopped gentrification. We stopped gentrification in East New York. Now you're gonna join the movement? Oh, we hungry out here. We don't have food. We fund food pantries. We give out food. Okay, now that I did that, you gonna join the movement? See, Steve Biko said it best. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And we gotta capture the mind of our people, because capitalism has got it. And so does some of the sports and celebrities and Jay-Z. You know, he talking about, okay, now that you took your knee, now what you gonna do? So he goes sell out so he can get some contracts with the NFL. And, you know, that kind of stuff, because we in the movement allow for others to get in front of it and in an opportunistic way. And they do some good things. I'm not criticizing all of them. I'm sure they do some good things, give some good stuff, and he's done some wonderful things. But we're talking revolution here. We're talking radical systemic change like Dead Prez and Matulu and them. That's the kind of rappers we need. And if we're going to get into some positive stuff, then let's organize from the bottom up so that we can impact where the power is. It's in the electoral arena. Do you know how wonderful it feels when a rich white male developer comes in my office and he has to bow because he knows we have the power? He can't build nothing unless we approve it. And the committee that his project is in is going to call me up and say, Councilman Barron, do you want this project? No, sir, it's dead. That's power. Councilman Brown, you want this project? No, I'm not going to do it until he does 80% my definition of affordability. If he doesn't do that, I don't want it. They do it, and that's why East New York is not gentrified. 90% of the people in East New York are black and brown, 70% black and 20% Latino.
Let me just take a pause. If this wasn't, let me tell you, this is like the best intro for the film, because, you know, you are capturing everything. It's almost like you did a trailer for the HAPI film. And family, if you have not seen a HAPI film, go to hapifilm.com and get this film, because Charles Barron gets it in. Okay. Professor Small opens up this film, and it was sprinkled all in there. Charles Barron takes the second half of that film and nails it down to the first theme, the fist, the da-da-da, so family, please make sure you are supporting so you can hear more about Charles Barron, and then get his book. As I was sitting here, so Brother Charles Barron, because you're my elder, so I can't just say your first name and leave it at that. So in this in what you're laying out that we need to do as Black folks, how do we integrate the people coming into the city? Like, how do we integrate them into what we're doing? Or do we get strong and then we bring them into the fold? Like, how does that work?
It's just...
Oh, come on.
No, see, we got to build organizations. We cannot do it as individuals. We have to build organizations. So we started Operation Power. We had a handful of people. They said, you can't win if you don't have no money. We beat them and they have more money than us. They said, you can't win if you don't have the electors on your side. We beat them for 20 years. We beat Hakeem Jeffries. We beat Eric Adams. We beat Andrew Cuomo when he was governor. We beat other elected officials. We beat some unions that went with the machine. We beat them. but we started an organization. So we need to get organized. We can't just say, hey, you know, just the people, we got to fight, you know, we got to rise up, as you're saying. You got to join an organization that's doing something progressive. And if you don't find anybody out there doing something progressive, then you start one on a local level. I joined my block. You know how I got in electoral politics? I joined my block association, the Bradford Street Block Association. It was 8 sisters who were elderly, and I came to my first meeting when I got out, and they said, "Oh, hi, we're so good to see you, man. Let's have a vote today for president." They voted for me president the first day I came to the meeting. I said, "Wait a minute, you didn't tell me it's going to be an election." They were so happy to see a black man, you know, a man come into their meeting. And then what we did, was 8 of us, 9 of us, and Inez, and we said, look, let's first shut down that drug selling store on the corner. So we put up signs, drug-free zone under video watch. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, we marched up and down and said, hi, y'all, you know, to the drug people dealing. This is our neighborhood. And they was wondering where the cameras was. 2 weeks later, shut down, gone. We stopped an environmentally hazardous incinerator from coming into our district because they wanted to pollute the air just to build energy. We were able to stop them from taking out the fire alarm boxes, saying there's too many false alarms. We stopped that. They had coal-fired furnaces in our school, and we stopped that. So we've done a whole lot for the parks. We built Gershwin Park. We call it Sonny Carson Park. When I came in there, it was nothing but dirt. Now it's one of the best parks in the city. So if you build a movement, you can do it. And we can do it on every level. We're going to have, and I'd like to come back for this on October 27th, 28th, and 29th. We're going to have our second National Black Radical Political Conference. It's going to be in Baltimore, Maryland, and I want to tell you more about it. We had it last year just to test it out. We had about 60 people show up, and we had about 12 states represented. Now, and our agenda is anti-capitalism, imperialist wars, and for reparations, for freeing political prisoners, more socialists than capitalists. And we got people all over the country that want that. We got to build it. So organize.
You got to make sure you come back on and talk to us about that. I didn't know that was happening.
Yes, please. I know. That was my bad. We were testing it out the first year just to get a feel of it. And once I saw it was real, see, I don't like inviting people to stuff and say, hey, man, they're talking all of this. Is it really going to happen? Now that I see we got real people, we made it happen. So I'm definitely got to come back to tell you about that on October 27th, 28th, and 9th, the National Black Radical Convention.
Oh, family, right there in Baltimore. Okay, that's what's up. I'm sorry, you were. I had to make sure I got clarity about that. Go ahead, you can finish.
Oh no, you got it. You got it. I just want to let y'all know that we definitely have to organize and notice too. No form of our oppression is permanent. I know it feels like imperialism is definitely invincible, people think, because they got all the weapons, the military weapons, they have all the economy, but listen, Huey Newton said it best, the spirit of the people is greater than the technology of them. And they said the Roman Empire would never fall. They said the Russian Empire would never fall. It fell and trying to get back up. And the American Empire is falling right now all over the world. People are rising up. Nigeria that you mentioned, they're rising up all over the world. Any leader that subscribes to any permanency of our oppression is not fit to lead us. If somebody tells you we can't beat capitalism, we can't beat racism, we can't beat America because we don't have this, we don't have that. No form of our oppression is permanent. We have to realize that history is on our side. Look who America supported all over the world. Batista, a murderer in Cuba. Baby Doc and Papa Doc, murderers. Pinochet, a murderer in Chile. Marcos, a murderer in the Philippines. The Shah of Iran, murderer. And what happened to all of them? The Sandinistas beat Somoza. Che Guevara and Castro beat Batista. And look at all the victories we have all over the world. Look at Africa, Patrice Lumumba, Sekou Touré, and Thomas Sankara, all of these. And now they came back with neo-colonialism, but now it's our time to flip it back. The American Revolution that wasn't a revolution. That was an American rebellion against England because they were ending slavery. And they didn't want slavery to end because all of those that came from Europe and were on these plantations in the South, that was their economy. That's why they went against. That wasn't a revolution. That was a rebellion. Revolution, you change the system. They had the same system, and they created these United States and called it the United States. Ain't no such thing really as the United States. Those were some Europeans that had the 13 colonies. They called them what they were, colonies. And we still have domestic colonies.
Well, I want to, thank you for, adding context, especially, in New York State where I'm at. I want to, like the numbers are so alarming, and I'm sitting here, the wheels are turning. I'm just trying to think about, how can we, start to get organized, and I do have this question because you said about joining institutions. Do you have a list of institutions that are as radical in their thought process as you and your wife Inez? And shout out to Inez Barron, your beautiful queen.
Absolutely. I don't know what I'd do without her. That's my heart and soul. Yes, yeah. It is. I always tease everybody. They say, you're all a little different. I said, yes. When I fight you, you see the punch coming. And if it hits you in your eye, I'm the one that gave you the black eye. When Inez fights you, you're talking to her and she's smiling. And then when you go home, your eye swells up. Yeah. And you say, who did that?
Let me tell you.
I didn't even see that one coming.
Yeah. She did an interview with us like early on. I think our first year of HAPI Talks. And she had said some things. And, I was sitting there interviewing and I was listening to him. But it wasn't until I actually went back and listened to it. I was like, oh, my God, she said this. Okay. Yeah. And she's just nice smiling lady.
I'm telling you, she is brilliant. Yeah. She is as radical and revolutionary as I could ever be. But, I'm in your face. They say she's class and I'm crass, but I think we're both class in our own way. But she doesn't play, and then when she makes a commitment, she honors it. And that's the thing we got to have. A lot of Black Panthers got into the electoral arena, and some anyway, and flipped after they got in. Some civil rights leaders got into the arena and flipped. And look what they do with the civil rights movement. They have these civil rights leaders going to Washington for another March on Washington, the 60th year. But they're supposed to be disciples of Dr. Martin Luther King. Well, why don't you act like King? Because in his last year on earth, in 1968, he was organizing a poor people's campaign to go to Washington, set up Resurrection City, and say he was going to engage in militant civil disobedience. They were not going to leave until they got the $60 billion anti-poverty program passed by John Conyers. They were going to go to the airport, stop the planes from taking off. They were going to each of the government buildings and stop the business that's going on as usual, militant civil disobedience, until the bill was passed. These leaders are going every year to have speeches and photo ops and come back empty-handed. A blank check, as Martin Luther King would say. Martin Luther King was for reparations, and he was a socialist. So some of these rare people that claim all of this stuff for King, they're against socialism. If you're against socialism, you're against Dr. King. Because Dr. King was a socialist. And Dr. King, toward the end, said, perhaps I worked hard to change, reform the institutions of the South. Well, now I think differently. Little change here, little change there was not working. I think we need a radical rearrangement of the entire society, a revolution of values, and a move toward democratic socialism. Talk about that, Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King said we're living in domestic colonies, and the power needs to be transferred to the Black people in the ghettos, as he called them, domestic colonies, so we can determine our own destination. That's the same thing the Black Panthers said. The first edict of the Black Panther Party's 10-point program says we want to determine the destiny of our Black communities. We want that power, and we want to control all of the institutions in our community that impact our lives. Martin Luther King and the Panthers were saying the same thing. Not all the way, just on that one, on that point. There were some other things, Even the question of Black power. Martin Luther King said, I don't have no problems with Black power. If you talk about economic power, political power for Black people, he had problems with the Black power slogan during the march with him and Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture later. He said, if you say Black power, you're letting white racism off the hook. And they're going to ask us to define that instead of a focus on white racism. But Dr. King was wrong. Stokely was right to say that, because it reverberated all over the world, because that needed to be said at that time, because all of this other stuff was not working. So we needed to take it to another level. That's where we are now. We need to bring back the call for radical systemic change, revolution. We need to talk socialism. And when you say communism, listen to the systems. Communism, communalism in Africa. Socialism, people. Feudalism, those are monarchs. Landlords, the lords of the land, that came from feudalism. And then capitalism, that's the God is money. So capitalism, feudalism, and then you talk about socialism, communalism. Communalism, and Dr. Smalls knows this better than anybody, that how systems operated more from a collective communal perspective than an individualistic capitalistic perspective.
Mm. Mm. Wow. I'm going to tell you right now, when we were thinking about doing this show, Taki and I, I had different, I had a whole list of nice questions, all nicely, sat there, and I was like, okay, I'm going to ask this and ask that. But, you just started off, and this whole idea, I didn't even think about it from this perspective. I was really just thinking about how, as Black folks, I feel like the foot is already on our necks, and it's just like, how much more, can we take? Especially when I look at the education piece, because there's a lot of we don't, this teacher crisis is happening in terms of just not enough teachers, to teach the kids in New York City. And so they're just, sort of just taking people who have not even real training to stand in front of our kids. But then, the other piece is that, I was thinking about with all the influx of people coming into the classroom, where does that, what happens to those kids sitting in the classroom in terms of just the language barrier? Because, I have a couple of friends that all have kids that are around kindergarten and first grade level. And, and they're talking to me about how most of the classrooms that they're in, the teachers are Hispanic teachers, and they basically teach speak Spanish almost all day, because that's the population that's coming in. And so, as I'm thinking about that, and then you're thinking about this whole influx, it's just yeah,
but you know what it is, my sister? And once again, it gets back to power. There The New York City's education budget is $36 billion.
You wouldn't even
That's
know.
more than some states.
Absolutely.
There are there are over 1 million children, in the system. 70% of them are us, black and brown. But who controls the curriculum? Who determines, what's going to be taught? Who determines what schools are going to get what resources? Who determines who's going to get computer labs and science labs? In my schools, that's the first thing I did. I fought for science labs, computer labs. We have libraries without a librarian. We have some libraries without any books. We have music without any instruments, or we have the instruments and no teachers. So we have to, in every aspect of our lives, especially education. My wife has been an educator for 36 years. And so, yes, we got to build independent schools and teach our own, but most of our children are going into the public schools. And some of them are going into charter schools, and they're privatizing education. So once again, power. If you are passing the budget in a city where you have 8 city council members or 9 city council members or 10, 12 city council members, we need to get where the power is. See, and there are a whole lot of singular issues: education, healthcare, stop gentrification, free our political prisoners, reparations. We want our reparations. But having reparations and still on the American plantation, freeing our political prisoners and they're coming home to the plantation, having our children in these schools, and we still on the American plantation, and we're not challenging the system. No matter what your issue is, police brutality. If the police stop killing us tonight, stop disrespecting us tonight, stop beating us up tonight, you're still poor. Because the police are an occupied force to protect the capitalists. So if you're just fighting against police brutality, Black Lives Matter, who you talking to? We know we matter. Who you talking to, white people? So if you're just doing that and it's not connected to radical systemic change, revolutionary change, dismantling the colonial capitalist system and having a better one, and yes, it can happen. It will happen. Nothing lasts forever. How do you eat an elephant? They say 1 bite at a time. Don't try to swallow the whole thing. Can you walk 1,000 miles? Sure, 1 step at a time. They say life is hard if you take it by the yard, but it's a cinch if you take it inch by inch. And that's why we are going to win. You're not going to lose. They cannot maintain this. They're self-destructing. They got Trump and Biden. Let them go at each other. Just don't let it fall on top of us. Let them fight each other. Do you know a lot of our black leaders get away with criticizing Trump? Wow, that's a big deal. Only the sickest man on planet you criticizing. So a lot of their stuff hides behind. Did you see what Hakeem said about Trump? Who the hell cares? Did you see what he did to his local neighborhood? Let it be gentrified? Do you see him and Eric go to Israel and hug up on Benjamin Netanyahu, a racist murderer of Palestinian people, theft of their land? How the hell are you going to go there and wear a yarmulke more than you do a kufi and go into Africa? So these are the things that the contradictions we got to raise. And some people say, well, do you think revolution is going to happen in your lifetime, Charles? That's what I'm fighting for. I know we got to pass the torch to the next generation, but Dr. Smalls, I want it now. I want to be alive. And so if it doesn't happen, I'll pass the torch. But right now, I'm trying to make this thing happen. I'm 72 years old. I'll probably live to 110. So that's 50 more years I got. Yeah, I'm going to live to 110. So that's 50 more years I have to make this revolution happen. That's the way I feel about it.
Okay, well, there it is. We got 50 years.
Brother Charles, remember a part of the word revolution is the word evolution.
All right now.
Right. So
Yes,
we
gotta
carry the
evolve.
baton as far as we can carry it, and we pass it on. But you don't stop carrying it because you're not going to have victory in your time. Victory is the struggle itself to achieve victory. Never give up.
Never.
There you go.
Freedom or death.
That's right. By the way, speaking of the
mantra.
presidential election, on the 9th of September, we're going to have Dr. Cornel West on our program. We have Liberation Saturdays every fourth Saturday. I'll get you the information, the link to our program. A conversation with Cornel West, and that's my good friend. I know him a long time. We don't have the exact same politics, but we agree to a lot of things. But there's some things where we depart, but he's going to be on, and we're going to have a great conversation on, you know how I had to say, oh, if Cornel West runs, then he might as well just vote for Trump, because he's going to take votes away from Biden, and then Trump will win. Stop it. First of all, the people that's going to vote for Cornel West, only 60% of the American electorate votes. 40% don't vote. So the people that are going to vote for Cornel are people who would never vote for Trump or Biden. So he's not taking votes away from Biden. He's going to get those who would stay home because they don't like either one of the lesser of two evils, and they will vote for him. So he's not taking anything away from Biden. And plus, nobody inherits our vote. How the hell does Biden get the vote before the vote is cast? Nobody has no votes in the pocket. Somebody taking votes for you. Ain't nobody voted yet. So, you have to fight for each vote. The people, the independents, and those who are Democrats who don't like either Biden or Trump will vote for Dr. Cornel West, and he'll put these pieces forward. So no, don't let them fool you into thinking you gotta stop the lesser two evens. Oh, we gotta stop Trump. We gotta stop Trump. Stop Trump. You need to start Biden. Start the Democrats. You mean stop Trump. Biden and the Democrats. Biden's the one who did the crime bill. Barack Obama deported more people than Trump ever deported. And some of those cages that you saw and they put on Trump, those were what Biden and Obama built for the retiree. And the Africa man, there was about 5 or 6 countries that had military bases when Obama took office. When he came out, about 40, 50 countries now have military bases in Africa under your black president. And we supported him at first, said, okay, black man running, the masses like him. We had our critical support of him. Secondly, when I saw him killing Muammar Gaddafi, and what, are you crazy? So, we had to say, wait a minute. And, Israel gets $3.6 billion of armaments every year from America. But when the black president left, he made a 10-year deal with Israel to get $30 billion worth of weapons to murder innocent Palestinian women and children. $30 billion, and Netanyahu and them still don't like him.
Damn. You know what? Listen, I feel like I'm like everybody else. I'm just sitting here. I'm not facilitating nothing. I'm just pushing the button, putting up.
You brought a master. You brought a master teacher and political and revolutionary leader, and gave him the opportunity to express a truth that most of our people don't get to hear, from an experience that is extraordinary in government and community politics in this country. Because that same Mr. Obama, leaving office, one of the last bill he signed was for American troops to go into Somalia.
That's right.
And when we look at what's happening in Sudan today, that group that's called the Rapid Deployment Force, that's that force that he helped put into being, supposedly training us to protect ourselves. And that was just their trigger dog when the main government in Sudan wanted to open a base with the Soviet Union. They sicked the Rapid Deployment Force on the government of Sudan. We got to study history and see what's going on and get a sense of it.
That's right.
Get a real sense.
Yeah, who did more drone strikes than Obama?
Right.
He was they called him the
And most of his drone bases is in Africa.
That's right.
That they're flying the drones out of.
That's right. That's right. You know, if we had a right president, man, he could have put Africa on the map. He could have gave them more humanitarian aid instead of military bases. Talking about they fighting terrorists. Who's the real terrorist? What's a terrorist? I was on a program and some of the Jews were beating me up and saying, "You're supporting terrorists." I said, "Excuse me, how are you defining terrorism? What is terrorism? They kill innocent people. What the hell you think your government does? You think you can't call your murder of Palestinian people a collateral damage? Oh, so you see a building, the terrorist is on the second floor, you blow up the whole damn building and kill women and children and say, but we're focusing on the terrorists, and that's collateral damage." I always tell I said, don't call me anti-Semitic. Some of my Jewish people that I be battling, that's a cop-out, just calling me anti-Semitic. First of all, the Semites were black, and I would never be anti-me. But let's put that aside. How about a debate? Whose land is that? What about the Balfour Declaration? You know, what about Zionism of Theodore Herzl and Chaim Weizmann? Those were Zionists. Let's talk about that. You know, right in Brooklyn, they have in Brownsville, Herzl Street. What was that being named Herzl Street? Because the Jews were in Brooklyn, and they were going to use that and decided to go somewhere else. What does Brooklyn stand for? Brooklyn, the Dutch. What does Harlem stand for? Dutch. Brothers be talking about Brooklyn in the house. What are you talking about? That's Dutch. You proud to be? And look, in my community, I said, man, you know, we are the boys from, and they was naming, you know, some of the streets. And I said, you know, that's the name of a slaveholder. How could you call yourself the name of the slaveholder? Most of the streets in Brooklyn are named after slaveholders. We got to change the names of the streets. I'm glad in Harlem they have Black Panther Way now on 122nd Street, but we got to change the name of the streets.
So I want to make sure, Sister Alicia, that we do not view the oppressed peoples of the world who have been forced into this asylum seekers menagerie as the enemy of oppressed Black people in America, because they're not. They're not the enemy. They are the victims just like we are. And we've got to be clear on that above all things. And then we can define how to fight the common enemy and educate them to understand what we understand about how the system works here. Because when you're hungry and your family is being killed and you're impoverished and you can see no hope and no tomorrow, you will run wherever you have to. Okay? Our job, the people who have been resisting the tyranny and the genocide of America, to open our arms and embrace those people, even if we got to share the one slice of bread we have with them.
That's right.
Period.
That's right. That's right.
That's what freedom or death means. You can't have a halfway freedom. We can't be free and our brothers and sisters are enslaved. That's not freedom.
Nope. And we can't allow this system to manipulate us to kill each other. Right. Yeah, I tell my brothers in the hood, I said, listen, you think you bad? I mean, you're going to let this system keep you in this condition. And your response to that is to kill your brother. Not your oppressor, but your brother. To give what your side of the melting pot. We're all in this melting pot. So you're fighting for your side of the melting pot instead of getting out of it. You know, even in Africa, you got Africans killing Africans. You know, a lot of the African people killed Patrice Lumumba. African people killed Malcolm X. You know, whatever the government involved in the manipulation, Black people pulled the trigger. You know, so they have ways of getting us to self-destruct, battling each other, In the 60s, it was cultural nationalists. You remember, Jane? Cultural nationalists versus revolutionary nationalists. Integrationists versus separationists. Malcolm versus Martin. And then Adam Clayton Powell called them Martin Luther Coon, fighting each other. Marcus Garvey against W.E.B. Du Bois. And they start going at it. And matter of fact, even got racial on it. Said Marcus was an ugly looking African, whatever, and Boys was light skinned, just crazy stuff. So you got to fight these internal monsters in order for us to unite to go after the real enemy. Now, real traitors, we got to call out. But if somebody just has a different strategy or tactic than you, but honestly for our liberation, you got to let them roll. You do what you got to do, but let them roll. You don't have to jump all over that. So, we might have different groups, and if we beat up everybody, then who do you unite with? I just hit sellouts, people that are doing us harm. But if we have different ways of going about our liberation, we got to find a way, and we don't have to be overly idealistic. We're not going to unite everybody. For people who want to be black radicals and revolutionaries and go, come on, let's get down. But people who want to just get some progressive things for black people, and it may focus on more reformist stuff than radical systemic change, I work with you. I'll work with you because, it's like Huey Newton, Black Panther Party, one of the differences was survival programs against urban guerrilla warfare. So, Huey said, we got to feed the people, we got to feed the breakfast programs, and we got to have health care and survival packages and sickle cell anemia tests and all of that. And some others said, no, it's time to go underground and handle our business. So, sometimes we divide around tactics. Sometimes we divide around ideology. But the bottom line, if someone is sincere and genuinely fighting for the liberation of our people, lighten up. Let them do what they got to do. You do what you have to do. It's the traitors that we can't let off the hook.
Okay, we're going to close. I just have one last question. Are there any, is there any like institution or any like group of people that recognize this game, and not from a Black perspective, but from migrants coming in, that have suggested that we work together? Like, has there, like, is there anybody coming in that's like, what? They're trying to pit us against each other. Let's band together and let's try to fight this. Has there been any like standout person or institution doing that right now?
Well, there's a lot of small groups doing that. Some of the elected officials, saying we welcome them, and some of the progressive people on the city council are saying that we need to have sanctuary cities, just allow them to come in. But the problem with it is not, whether they have any people that will support them and work with them. It's Eric Adams. It's the people with the power that's causing the division, that's not taking care of the people here and dealing with folk coming in. It's that kind of stuff. So we got to fight that and not let them pit us against each other. So some of us are saying that, and we don't want to say, not in my backyard, no, to put them somewhere else. We're saying that we oversaturated, and we welcome you, but we oversaturated, so they need to put them in other communities where they have no shelters and no place. So I think we have to embrace them, because who's an immigrant? They're African people. They're Caribbean people. They're Latino people. They're us. That's our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, language don't change your race.
Sometimes we say those people. No, that's us.
Yeah, no, but it seems like we understand that, but they don't understand that. It seems like
we have to teach that, and we have to be the example. We have to be the model to teach that. You have one of the most powerful platforms there is, and what you've done tonight has been exemplary towards that fact. Platforms like this have a responsibility to teach what the people should know. I speak English, but that my brother who speaks Yoruba, we're still African. I have a daughter-in-law, she's upstairs sleeping. She's Dominican. I have another daughter-in-law across town. She's Jamaican. I married a woman from Trinidad, St. Martin. Okay? We're one African people. And we need to be clear on that and forever clear on that. Because they've played this game with us. Like you come from
That's
Plantation A and I'm from Plantation B, so we're supposed to be hooking up for Freedom with Harriet. Okay? A and B need to hook up with Harriet Tubman on Plantation C so we can get the hell up out of here. And that's
right. That's right. Now you asked a direct question that I shy away from sometimes when you said, who can you recommend people to go to? Because, you know, it's a lot of people that are in this for money, because there's money in dealing with the immigrants as well. The people that are getting contracts from Eric Adams to deal with this. So I'm gun shy on that, but I tell people that in your area, in New York City, wherever you are, you know, you need to go to City Hall, go to the community board meetings, get involved, and you will hear who's doing what and who, with organizations and groups are doing what. Right now, there's some elected officials. Many of us are supportive of immigrants, but we're not supportive at the expense of those of us who are already here and in shelters and in poverty and unemployed. We have to deal with both and not pit them against each other. So whoever is doing that, that's what the people should gear themselves toward. And if there's nobody out there doing it, start your own. You know, start an organization, start a small group, a collective. Don't have to be a big, sophisticated anything. You know, you can say us 10 people. There's a lot of people doing stuff, you know, seeing the people online, bringing them food and doing it. But the bigger question about the policies is where the politicians come in.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Brother Charles Barron. Thank you. And, you know, and thank you for saying that about you didn't want to recommend to somebody, because I was thinking, I was like, I done asked this brother like twice for something. And I was like, maybe he's having the same moment. And
I said, I ain't putting none of these folk out here.
Yeah,
I tell you, to be honest with you, there's so many people I don't trust. You know, if I recommend anybody, I would recommend them to Dr. Smalls, whatever he's doing. I recommend people to get down with Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party that the government is now indicting and having them go to court around trumped up charges as the COINTEL program did in the 60s. The African People's Socialist Party is doing great things. If you're anywhere near the shrine of the Black Madonna, that would be an excellent thing. The Nation of Islam, they're doing some positive things. If you can work with the nation. In East New York, we have Man Up Inc., A.T. Mitchell, they're doing positive things, and they have other violence interrupters that are doing great things as all. The December 12th movement of Viola Plummer and Omowale Clay and Claudia, they're doing great things. Dr. McIntosh and Simotep, you know, that's 10 people I recommended. Those people I know and trust. And if there's any branches of them dealing with immigrants, fine. But these are organizations you should consider being a part of, because they have a record in our movement. They're trusted, and we know their track record. So that would be something that people could join.
And Brother Charles, here's where we're failing. When a crisis like this come up, and we see this force coming towards us, then we get defensive. But where were we at the PTA meeting? Where were we at the school board meeting? When were we at the community board meeting? When were we at the land distribution board meeting? All these other instruments in our community that makes local politics work. If we want to be in place to make this make sense, then we have to be in place in our local political apparatus where we live. Right. And if we're there, we'll be on top of what Adams and the others are trying to do to us. And we'll be in position to alter and counter a lot of that stuff. And that is one of the big keys. I was president of PTA about 10 different times in my life when my children was in school. Every school they went to, I was at the PTA meeting, even when I was the only brother up in there. And we have to be there. I was at the school board meetings and all.
That's right.
I even started with some brother with Tony. You remember Brother Tony
That's
Spencer?
right.
God bless his soul. We started 2 Democratic clubs of our own, so we wouldn't have to be up with Charlie and them. We wanted something more progressive.
Look at that.
You've got to
Look
fight
at
at
that.
the local level. You got
That's
to get
right.
involved in every instrument that's available in your community and use
That's right.
those instruments. Take it from the others
That's right.
and use it the way
That's
we
right.
did.
There you go. Right. Start off with your block association. And if
Mhm.
you live in public housing, go to the tenant association meeting.
Mhm.
That's how I got elected. I went to the block association meeting, the tenant association meetings. You got a church in your district. If you think the church is doing well, if they're not,
Mhm.
you can tell them that this is what I want you to do, whatever. So, we have plenty organizations we could join. It doesn't have to be specifically for the immigration issue, but there's a lot of organizations doing great work that we should join. And every community has a community board. Every community has a block association, tenant association. Many communities have a Nation of Islam chapter in it. Simultep, if we can go to their forums, we learn so much from Simultep and Dr. McIntosh and that they're putting forward. And follow up and read up. He has a couple of books out, Amali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. They have land and institutions in Oakland, California, in St. Louis, and in St. Petersburg, and they have chapters all over Africa and the Caribbean. And they organize, and they have a group of white people that are supporting them as a support group saying, we're going to pay you reparations because our people did you wrong. So they got white people organizing, paying them reparations and doing things. So there's all kinds of organizations out there. Somebody got to be doing something you like.
Got to be doing
And so, yeah, there's no reason for anybody not to be connected with nobody.
And let's not forget the night before we end that we tell our people, support those brothers and sisters in Mali, support those brothers and sisters in Burkina Faso, support those brothers and sisters in Guinea, support the brothers and sisters in Nigeria, and now Gabon. Bongo and his family for 50-something years, robbing and abusing our people and keeping them in dire poverty, stealing all that oil money in Gabon. Had them in the newspaper bragging about their wealth and the land and the homes they own in England and California. They caught the sun this morning, yesterday morning. This Negro had over $1 billion stashed in his home. See, I don't want to stay on TV while I do to them. See, they wouldn't have a lot of tomorrows. They caught the secretary of the defense or something at the airport. He had $500 million worth of CFA in suitcases trying to get out of the country. The people, you know what the people in Gabon live? You know what the standard of living is like? It is profane genocide that has been heaped upon them. I don't know who these military people are. I don't know where they're going. But I tell you what I do know. I like what they're saying. They're saying we're going to give the wealth of this country to the people. Okay. And I like the move that the brothers have made in Nigeria. They said in Nigeria this morning, they're going to put a new government, civilian government in place. They're not going to let the outside say, put the collaborators back in power. Okay. What would be beautiful if Guinea, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso will come together and form one nation. That'll kill this stuff.
Wow.
Create a federated state.
Yes, that would.
Wow, that actually
those are artificial borderlines that were made in 1884.
You know, so I've been advocating that everywhere I can, and every time we can get on the platform to reach the young brothers and sisters in Africa, let them know, like we used to say about Mumir, if one of our soldiers died, there'll be fire in the sky. And every African capital of ECOWAS or AU will support any kind of invasion. If you leave Ghana and go to Niger, then you're gonna have to come back to Ghana because there's gonna be trouble in Ghana. If you leave Nigeria, you're gonna have to come back to Nigeria. And if we make that clear to the young people of Africa that this is our stand, you are not gonna take our soldiers and go invade our brother. You didn't go and invade the French, who was over there colonizing them. You didn't stop the French from stealing 50 to 60% of the national resources every year,
right.
and then charge them interest to borrow their own money back. You didn't tell the French to get out when they create a central bank for the CFA, but the French is the only one sitting on the bank board that has veto power. Kanish. You know, we support you, brothers and sisters. Y'all fight for your freedom. Dessalines said, freedom or death.
That's right.
Freedom or death.
Freedom or death.
That's right.
Well,
and so we want the world to know, because we know HAPI is heard around the world. We love y'all. We stand with y'all. We will rise up with y'all.
That's right.
Free yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
By any means necessary.
Also, just want to mention someone who's doing great work around reparations is Dr. Ron Daniels and his wife, Mary Frances Daniels. So those are the people you can also work with, and the Institute of the Black World.
Yeah, we need to get, we have not interviewed Mr. Daniels, and we need to get in contact with him. Yeah, his name keeps coming up a lot of different places. Okay, so Mr. Barron, I'm going to actually follow up with you to get more information about the conference, so we can put that in place so you can sign up for that. And you might want to have a conversation about your book and make sure it can get out of the United States.
I will.
And just thank you for coming on, shedding some light. I mean, not light. I mean, you brought the sun. It's like,
Rob.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And again, make sure you tell Queen Inez hello. And a lot of people were saying hello in the chat for her as well.
Would y'all like for me to give her a kiss for y'all? Because I'll be glad to do that.
Yes.
Would you like that?
Yes.
Okay. I'll take care of that.
Yes, there it is. Oh, that's nice. That's what's up. All right, so I'm going to take you off. I'm going to finish up with Professor Small, but thank you so much.
Let me thank Congressman Barron and the Queen Mother Inez for taking care of my son who's out there.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
what a great young man.
Yeah, from the very beginning, when they moved him the first time, Sister Inez was there to defend him.
She was right there.
Yes.
And man, you have a gem for a son, boy. I tell you, you have a gem for a son. It's an honor.
That's what's up.
But help the teaching. He still needs teaching, Brother Charles, so keep him straight out there.
You know we will. All right, night all. It was really an honor to be on with you, Dr. Smalls, as always.
Here,
thank you, my sister. Appreciate you.
We go back to Common Avenue selling that Black Panther Party piece. I remember the first time I met Brother Charles, a beautiful soldier then and a revolutionary leader now.
Thank you, sir.
Ancestors.
Have a good night.
All right. All right, Professor. I always like sitting with you. So listen, you got to tell everyone, because I see a lot of people in the comments, and let me just put this up about our trip to Egypt. And what you said struck a chord last time when you were talking about going, to Kemet. It's about a self-investment in yourself, right? And so I'm thinking about this in context of this conversation that we're having about, recognizing who the oppressor is, joining forces, and, and just, how can I say this? When we think about history, and I know you always say your line about history, you change it every single time you say it, but knowing the history, but this is so true, like in this instant right now, when we're talking about knowing your history, and what better place, and it's not, and let me just say this, Egypt is not the only place you can know your history. It is a part of your history, and we're going in February 16th to the 25th. Let me just get that up. And can you just, kind of elaborate what you said, when you were talking about the investment in yourself?
I can't remember none of that.
What I was about to say, I don't even know why I put you in a trick bag like that.
I know.
Right.
So, but the thing that's key, because, I'd given up on Kemet for some years, and then I started going back. I think it was in 2006 and combining it. But the ancestors left such an investment for us. They left a treasure. There's no treasure like it in the world, having been left to a people by their ancestors to guide them into the future. So part of why you should go to Kemet, it is part of the process of self-rebirthing. You understand? To rebirth yourself, you must get to know yourself, not just your intellectual self, but there's a spiritual self. There is a historical, ethical, moral self. And what Egypt shows us is the ethical, moral, spiritual self of the African before this time. So if you want something to model your rebirthing process after, then Kemet is the vaginal channel that leads to the womb of African peoples.
The vaginal channel. Okay. All right, Professor.
I used to teach that back in the beginning of ASCAC. Matter of fact, when you got inducted into ASCAC in the early days, when I was president of the Eastern Region, we would create a human vaginal channel, right? And have the womb of the sisters birth the new member through that channel. As a part of the cell, I don't think they do that anymore. You know, I was always kind of esoteric and stuff. The idea and the concept is constant. And something the ancestors told me in Ghana this summer, that our return back to Africa and return back to Kemet, which is our holy land. When we return there, we carry the spirits of those who were brought on the slave ships back home, never to leave Africa again. So we are more than just visitors to Kemet. We are vessels and conduits for all those millions of spirits that was dragged out of that continent. We take them back home through the womb of the mother. And this is not just conversation. If you know anything about me, I live a spirit life because I believe in spirituality being your constant daily reality. And if you understand this, if you could just imagine, you know, and I didn't understand it, but my grandmother did it to me when I was coming to New York to join Malcolm X's organization. And Mama said, baby, why you got to leave? I was down in South Carolina, Acadia Plantation. She said, why you got to go up there? I said, well, they killed him, Mama. And I have to go and help take over that organization. I'm going to run it. Something I did do. You know, I became the imam over the mosque. I became number 2 in the OAU. I was his sister's bodyguard. But my mom, when I told her I was going to New York, because she wanted to know, who is this man, the Malcolm X? And I'm explaining to her. She says, come here to me. And she put my face in her lap, on her womb, on her, where her vagina is. And then she put her hands on my head and she prayed for me. And then when she lifted me up, she says, no one will be able to kill you as long as you don't let them put it through your mouth. And don't worry about any of the rest of it. And I came to New York with that. And then I remember later what she did was to took me back through her womb. I came out of her daughter's womb, but her daughter came out of her womb. So her womb was also my womb. And that's what Kemet is to Africa. This is the womb of our grandmother. This is the womb of our grandmother. And when you're looking at this temple that you're showing right now, don't that look like the vaginal passage to the womb of grandma?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite places on earth. Is Abu Simbel.
Abu Simbel.
Yeah, and when I walk in there,
holies.
Yeah, I tell you, when I walk in there, it is just like it's a feeling like I got you, and it's it's like, no, you know, I've gone through a lot of gone into a lot of the temples, but this one in particular, it is just like it's like a warm blanket someone just gave you. It is so I love it. I love it. That's why I always show this one when I'm on the show.
Every single thing, every single carving, every single statue, every single bit of writing, every single painting is telling the story of becoming a human being. Every single thing in those temples is telling us how we came from the divine to the human, because we are the divine being human. And that's what those stories are explaining to you.
Yeah.
And when you understand it, you can see our truth in every religion on earth and know that our ancestors have left it in stone, which gives us actually, and I know people don't like the word, a superior understanding of reality. A superior understanding of reality. So I tell y'all, get on the plane. Remember that movie, Get on the Bus?
Yeah,
when we're talking about the March in Washington, well, get on the plane.
And let me, you know,
on the 16th of February, be with HAPI, landing in Kemet. You know.
Yes. And, you know, and let me just give a shout out to people in the chat, because quite a few people that have been like Dorielle, she coming. Hazina coming, Wolfman Lou. I can't wait to hug Wolfman Lou, because this is my boy. I've been talking to him for like forever. So he's coming. Takesha, like I've seen a lot of people in the chat, you know, that are definitely supporting, because this is going to be a very this is going to be a good trip. And just to give, you know, just to let everybody know, just like some basic information about the trip. You know, it's all inclusive. The only thing you pay for is your drinks, which are like 50, 75 cents. We're leaving out of JFK. Not only are we doing this economic piece, and Professor, I want you to speak on that part in a minute, because someone just asked a good question. But you know, we're also going to have a HAPI gala. We're selling up the Nile for 4 days. We have our own ship. Like, this is going to be fantastic. Infodishi Juhutimis is, you know, going to be coming with us as one of the tour guides. So we are also going to have economic courses that will be happening. So it's kind of like the Tom Joyner cruise meets history. So you'll be partying a little bit, but you're going to definitely be learning something. And let me see, I'm going to back up this question. AM asked, how are we going to apply the old wisdom of Egypt to close the wealth gap of today?
That's an easy answer, because it's not old wisdom. Wisdom is wisdom. The word wisdom means the appropriate application of knowledge. So wisdom is not old or new. It's constant. And so when you understand that wisdom is the appropriate application of knowledge, then we have to find out what are the body of information we need to know about establishing economic sovereignty where we live. And the first thing you have to do, be shackled to your identity. You have to be free, because most monies move in around the culture of a people. You know, you go in a Chinese neighborhood, you see Chinese restaurant, everybody sells their culture to themselves and to the world. We're the only one that don't sell our culture to anybody. Matter of fact, somebody else sells our culture to us. And so we need to start getting hip and getting a clear understanding on what economic means. Economics come from ecology. What is in your environment that allows you to have wealth? You live in Detroit. What is the wealth in your environment? The wealth in your environment is real estate. The wealth in your environment is controlling retail. The wealth in your environment is controlling the wholesale and the retail that service you in your daily lives. Okay? The wealth in your environment is to put together for-profits and not-for-profits to take advantage of the tax revenues that's being returned to your community every year, so that you control this flow and not your enemy doing it from the outside. That's where the wealth is. So you must have knowledge of your ecology, knowledge of your basic environment, and be in control of your local environment, your local polity, your local organizations. That's how you make economic work. That's how you take the ancient wisdom, because when you study Kemet, they were in control of their environment. They were informed by their ecology and their cosmology. All right. And that doesn't change. The Chinese is using the same methodology our ancestors used in Egypt. The American capitalist is using the same methodology to some degree of our ancestors in ancient Kemet. We're the ones not using it because we don't have an understanding of it. Because when you don't know history, you're caught up in somebody else's mystery. You must learn your history in order to see what are the instructions of my ancestor to me. Your history is your ancestors' instructions to you. And if you don't know that history, you don't know your instructions.
That's good. See, you're not going to remember that. You're not going to remember that.
Remember that. That's
yeah.
For now.
History is your ancestors' instructions to you.
Absolutely.
Yes. So AW, that's why you need to come on this trip because we're breaking down the economic piece. And once you understand it, your body will just remember it because you got to carry it back here and you got to set up.
Well, let me tell AW the simplest way. Go stand in the front of a mirror in your house. Take off all of your clothes so that the only thing you own in that house is the mirror that's reflecting your naked body. Now realize you're not going to walk out of your house like that. Everything else you need, you have to acquire economically. Now, who are you going to acquire it from? Lesson 101 in economics. Your shoes, your underwear, your clothes, okay, your food, your transportation mode, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things that this naked body must acquire in order to go out into the world. Those are the things that makes up your economics. Now, either you're selling it to yourself or somebody else is selling it to you. Economics is not complex. All of us are spending collectively nearly $2 trillion this year with the people we say we hate and we say hate us. Stop spending our $2 trillion with them and spend it with ourselves.
Yeah.
If you don't have a black store in your neighborhood to give you certain things, then do without those things until you can build one that will give you certain things. Do you have that kind of discipline? Do you love yourself that much? Do you love freedom that much that you can sacrifice until you can create for yourself? And it doesn't take that long to do it because we have the capital. So when you go to Egypt with HAPI, you're not just going to get history, culture, spirituality, fun, joy, and the fantastic evenings we have on these ships where we control the total social environment.
Total thing.
But you're also going to get a lesson in how simple and basic economics is. It's not something mystery off in a university. It's who do I buy my water from? Who do I buy my rice from? Who do I buy my fish from? Who do I buy my shoes from? Who do I buy my shirt from? If you can answer that, all of those questions with from me and my kind, then you've solved your economic problem.
Yeah, there it is. All right, family. I put it. Someone asked for it in the chat. I put the link in there, acattours.com, or if you head to hapifilm.com, we have a link on there as well. Put your deposit in because once we sell out the ship, then we have to we cap off anyone else coming because you can't just. I mean, you can come and not come on the ship with us, but I mean, we're a whole family at JFK coming, going over. So it's and things are going pretty fast. And so right now you have like 6 months to pay or 5 months to pay. And we are Black folks. We have some creative payment plans for you, and we just put that out there. And yeah, if you can make it happen. I saw Dr. Patel said, "Oh, I might have to come." Absolutely, you have to come. You got to come. It's going to be fun and educational and just all that good stuff. Yeah.
And I wanted to mention, a lot of the pushback we've seen coming from our Arab friends and cousins in Kemet is not coming from the masses of the people. This is coming from an elite few in the intellectual world and from some elite few in government. And a lot of it because they had not been clear in expressing the historical truth about Kemet to start with. And so now they're caught having lied to their people about a histology that was never theirs. And now here we come in the thousands every year to be informed and instructed by our ancestors' memories, which we are calling history. And they got a problem. Now, some of us saw that piece, Cleopatra, and I heard all the argument about she wasn't white, she wasn't black, yada. Well, I know enough to know she wasn't white, and I don't have to go into detail. And the beautiful thing about that, much of that script was written by my goddaughter, Nane, an Igbo woman from Nigeria, who was not just a hell of a screenwriter, but she was the British High Commission ambassador from Britain to Mozambique at the time she was writing it. So there's so much, and they got disturbed by that script, even though 30% of what she put in it that was African, the cowards took out in Netflix before they even finished the editing. If you had seen what she really put there, they would have had a real fit. I was talking to her last night. She has just been signed the contract now to do a piece on Nanny of the Maroons in Jamaica. I know that's going to be deep. So the spirit of Kemet, and she's been in Kemet and studying Kemet for years, and I've known her since she was a young girl. I remember I proposed to her parents for my brother who became my husband, who married her. And in that culture, he couldn't propose. I had to propose for him. So I'm saying all of this to say, spirit is deeper than you know, right? Spirit is deeper than you know. The spirit of the ancestors coming through that vaginal pathway and womb of Kemet is calling us to come back home so we can be instructed and informed by the minds of our ancestors on how to go forward, on how to build our economy, on how to build our sociology, on how to understand our cosmology. And the one thing you're going to learn when you go to Kemet and you go to these tombs and you go to these temples, you're going to see they took cosmology and ecology and they created sociology. And in the sociology is your economics, your politics, your culture. So do this thing. Get on the boat.
Yes, get on the boat. I hear. I'm looking at some of these comments that's coming up on the chat, and I don't think you and I are sitting here and saying, "Oh, the Arabs are our friends. Let's go over there and visit them." That's not what we're saying. We're not. They're not part of the equation. And I think that sometimes it's interesting that we may criticize, like some people are criticizing Black folks that are going to Egypt and saying, oh, you're giving them, they just want your tourist dollars. And America doesn't, especially when you start off by saying we are contributing $1.2 trillion into the economy. I don't know.
No, we got to be clear and we got to have common sense, because I stopped going for a long time ago. Like, I got the rest of Africa to deal with, but this is Africa too, and there's a particular message that's left here that's not left anyplace else in Africa. Yeah. And because of the ecology, the preservation of it has been extraordinary. And despite the fact that it's been invaded from the 300s, well, before the Greek in the 300s, we had the Persians. Before that, we had the Assyrians. Before that, we had the Hittites. Before that, we had the Hyksos. And we would, after the Greek and the Romans, then we would get the Kurds and the Eastern European and the Turks. It is an amalgamation of them that creates the Arabs. And so most of the people that live in Kemet today, they're not Arab at all. These are really Turks and Eastern Europeans. So we need to study history to know the mystery and get a clear understanding so that we don't think we're smart and we sound foolish. And I can speak on the subject well because I'm a Muslim and part of my tradition. I'm a Hajj. I've been to Mecca. I know the culture. I know the religion. I was an imam of one of the most strategic mosques in America for almost a decade and a half. That's the Muslim Mosque, Inc., founded by Malcolm X before his assassination. And so I've lived in that world. I know that world. Most of it is a Black world, you know. Yeah. It's like living in Mississippi with all those Black people, but having the white folks running the state government and the city government. But the masses of people in Mississippi are all these Black folks. Or the same way if we look at South Carolina or Georgia or any place else. So, but this material that we're going to study, the images we're going to peruse and trying to gain an understanding from, this language that Baba Mfadishi is going to interpret and translate for you, these are the instructions from your ancestors on how to rebirth yourself, how to rebirth your consciousness, how to become an African again. That Africa got to be more than just the label. Black have to be more than just a reference to a possible skin tone, because most of us are shades of black called brown. And so we need to understand what the message is our ancestors left us about being human. Okay?
Yeah.
They left us a message on being human, how to become that again. That's the beauty in Kemet that you see everywhere, that they left us these instructions so we can go back to Memphis, so we can go back to Columbia, South Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Michigan, Oakland, California, and says, hey, I know how to get rid of the poverty in this community. Let's get together and do it. Hi, I know how to get the right education in our schools. Let's get together and do it. Right now, we're sitting in Oakland, we're sitting in Detroit, we're sitting in Chicago, and a minority of people, yes, whites are a minority in America. A minority of people are running our school systems. A minority of people are running our fire department. A minority of people are running our police department. And we sitting here complaining and cowering in the corner like a bunch of cowards because we don't know how to solve the problem. Well, our ancestors will instruct and inform you on how to solve the problem by showing how to rebirth yourself, rebirth your consciousness, and then give you a blueprint of what is the intellectual foundation upon which men and women build families and societies. It's not just a visual. You know, you're recreating yourself so you can recreate the world that you live in.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. Family, I want to also thank everyone who gave us money on the Cash App. Y'all just don't even know. Like that money goes straight up and down back to Black folks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you guys all for showing up for this conversation. It was a much needed conversation. And this is not the last time we're going to talk about this, right? You know, and we're going to keep this conversation going. Yeah, just thank you. Thank you. Professor, you have any closing words? It seems like every time you talk, your words sound closing.
No, my words would be simply this. Let's not forget the brothers and sisters in Africa. Let's not forget Niger. Let's not forget Burkina Faso. Let's not forget Mali.
Absolutely.
Let's not forget Gabon. Let's not forget the ones in Cote d'Ivoire who need to run Ouattara and those criminals out of power there. Let's not forget any of these collaborators that need to be removed because they sat over French colonialism with their mouths closed. So don't tell me nothing about no ECOWAS and AU, because ECOWAS and AU, if you make the wrong move, you're going to be destroyed. Leave our people alone. Hear my words really clearly, because I am an ancestor when I speak these words, and you have no power against us as ancestors. So you need to get it right this time. Stand down, negotiate with our young people, and get it right so that they can govern themselves and use the raw materials of their nation to get their people out of poverty. And then you'll have it right. You know that it's freedom or death, you know, and freedom or death. That's the only choices we have.
The only choice we have. All right, fam. And thank you guys for all the shout outs. And yes, I know somebody said this in the comments and had me rolling. He was like, Felicia's speechless. I can be speechless sometimes. I'm speechless sometimes. Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, you guys are just giving the heat. I love me some Charles Barron. That's what's up.
Extraordinary revolutionary consciousness.
Absolutely. All right, fam. You know, we'll be back with another installment. And, you know, anytime my brother's here, I always let you go ahead and say, you know, you say it better than me. So can you close us off with your...
She wants me to say peace and blessings, everyone.
Yes, peace and blessings.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?